Hello, and welcome back to this series on the origins of the flags used by each nation in Europa Universalis IV. My name is Videosyncratic, and in the previous episode, I assessed the flags used by the 14 tags of Irish culture. In today's instalment, I will be tackling the remaining flags of the British Isles. As with the previous video, I will leave a table of contents pinned in the comments below, so if you want to find my entry on a particular flag, you should be able to navigate to it straight away. Once again, I will apologise for any pronunciation errors in advance. I really do try, but pronunciation is sadly not my forte. Compared to Ireland, the rest of the British Isles are easier to divide up, as, even by the time Europa Universalis IV begins in 1444 AD, the area had already become quite unified to the point where there are only 8 flags in total to cover in today's episode. Even then, only 3 of those flags are present at game's start. 5 are from nations occupied by other powers, mostly England, while the last one is for the formidable nation of Great Britain. Without further ado, let's begin with the Kingdom of England, the largest nation of the British Isles by some margin at the game's start. In EU4, the flag of England is quartered. In the first and fourth quarters are 3 gold fleurs-de-lis on an azure field, while in the second and third quarters are 3 gold lions passant guardant, that is, striding with their heads turned towards the observer. The origin of England's flag is simple enough. It is taken directly from the Royal Arms of England, first adopted in 1406 and used, with some variation, until the Acts of Union in 1707 formally fused England and Scotland together. Even after this point in time, several elements of these arms would still be used, and traces of them are plainly visible on the contemporary royal coat of arms of the United Kingdom. The lions in the second and third quarters represent England itself. The image of a lion as a representation of England has its first dated use in the first Great Seal of King Richard I, the Lionheart. Additionally, it is from Richard's second Great Seal that the usage of 3 lions is derived. In their original context, they represented his status as the ruler of 3 lands: the Kingdom of England, the Duchy of Normandy, and the Duchy of Aquitaine. The colour red has been associated with England for centuries, with the most credible explanation being that it is simply taken from St George's Cross, itself being used as early as 1188 by King Henry II, the father of Richard the Lionheart. From there, it would ultimately evolve into the national flag of England. The remaining quarters of the Royal Arms of England look distinctly French, with the fleur-de-lis being a long-lasting representation of the French monarchy, much as the lion represents England. As for the exact meaning and origin of the fleur-de-lis, I hope you don't mind if I wait until my episode on France to cover that. As for how this motif ended up on the English arms, one has to look to history. In brief, the French House of Capet became extinct in 1340. While completely barred by French law, according to English succession law, King Edward III of England had a very strong right to the French throne, and so he promptly claimed it, sparking the 100 Years' War. Thus, he added the French quarters to represent his newly assumed title as the King of France. Amazingly, the monarchs of England would continue to pretend to also be the King or Queen of France until 1801, several years after the French Revolution had rendered it something of a moot point. Next on the list is Cornwall, a releasable nation that begins the game in the ownership of England. I believe that it represents the Duchy of Cornwall, as its in-game flag is taken directly from the ducal flag and coat of arms. In my opinion, these stand out as they depict an inverted triangle of golden spheres on a sable field. These spheres are known in heraldry as byzants, from the European name of a Byzantine gold coin. The origins of this design ultimately come from Puns, Pise, and Poitou. The arms were adopted in the 15th century, but stem from the much earlier arms of Richard, Earl of Cornwall and second son of Bad King John. He was also the Count of Poitou, albeit in name only. A fairly common practice in heraldry is the use of canting arms, that is, using a pun to illustrate the name, title or function of the bearer. In this case, pois, the French word for pea, is used as a punning reference to Poitou, and so the 15 discs are actually supposed to represent peas. As for why they are gold instead of a more natural colour, some questions simply don't have an answer. Similar to many of the Irish flags seen in the previous episode, the flag of the releasable Dukedom of Northumberland is based on the coat of arms of its ruling house, in this case the Percy family, who have held the title to the earldom and later dukedom since 1377. In EU4, the flag of Northumberland shows a blue lion rampant, that is, rearing up on its hind legs, on a gold field. This particular variant of the Percy family arms is the modern one, although these still date from 1301. The story of how they came to be adopted over the ancient arms is the story of the ambitious knight Henry de Percy, who died in 1314. While he was a nobleman, he was only a baron, about the lowest rung on the aristocratic ladder of England at the time. However, over a century prior, a member of the family had married a prestigious noble from the continent named Jocelyn of Louvain, a son of the Landgrave of Brabant. To stress his connections to nobility, Henry changed his arms to one based on those of Brabant, although in different colours, and this design is still in use by the Percy family today. As for the origin of the Brabantine lion, that is going to have to wait until I get round to the flags of the Low Countries, whenever that may be. While today Wales is one of the 4 constituent countries that make up the United Kingdom, its exact status has historically been quite complicated and has varied a great deal over time. In EU4, Wales is a nation releasable by England and, by my estimation, is intended to represent a hypothetical independent and unified Princedom of Wales. This is because the in-game flag of Wales is based on the standard of the Prince of Wales. This is again a quartered flag with a single lion passant guardant in each quarter. The lions in the first and fourth quarters are red on a gold field, while those in the second and third quarters are the inverse. For those of you who don't know, the title of Prince of Wales is currently a substantive one typically conferred by the monarch upon their heir apparent. As a formal title, it comes with an official standard, which is very similar to the one used in-game, but with the addition of the Prince of Wales coronet emblazoned on a green shield in the centre. It is also worth noting that this banner is used only in Wales and not outside of it. The use of this flag by the Prince of Wales comes from its use as the personal arms of Llewellyn the Great, who, while not styling himself as the Prince of Wales, was the effective ruler of all of Wales from around 1230. In turn, this personal coat of arms was taken from those of his dynasty, the House of Aberfrau. In 1444, the only other kingdom to share the island of Great Britain with England is Scotland, and, like England, it too ultimately takes its flag from the royal banner used at the time. In this case, the in-game flag is a red lion rampant, within a red double shield which incorporates fleur-de-lis on a gold field. This is directly based on the royal coat of arms of Scotland, in turn based on the royal banner of Scotland. The use of a red lion rampant by Scottish monarchs is a long-running one. Its earliest use is a heraldic symbol, being with King David I in the early 12th century to represent his descent from Malcolm III. Indeed, several Irish clans who trace their lineage to Malcolm III still use this motif to this day. Upon noticing the fleur-de-lis border, I initially thought these must have been added as homage to the old alliance between Scotland and France. However, as it turns out, the addition of this embellishment actually predates this diplomatic development by about 10 years. A much more familiar Scottish flag is that of the releasable nation, Gaeldom, perhaps more illustratively named as the Highlanders. I feel that I need to give some historical context on this one. In 1444, the entirety of contemporary mainland Scotland was under the control of the Kingdom of Scotland. However, while it may have technically been united under one polity, it was far from being culturally unified, with the most important division running between the early Scots-speaking Lowlands and the Gaelic-speaking and still quite Celtic Highlands. While Scotland was actually more divided than this basic tension between Lowlanders and Highlanders is represented in-game through Gaeldom. The flag used by the Highlanders in EU4 is simply the current national flag of Scotland, a white saltire on an azure field known as St Andrew's Cross, or St Andrew's Saltire. St Andrew is the patron saint of Scotland, hence the appearance of his cross on its national flag. As for how this came to be, there are multiple stories. One legendary account states that in 832 AD, King Angus II led an army of Picts and Scots into battle against the Angles led by Aethelstan in East Lothian. The Pictish side was greatly outnumbered by the Angles, and so on the eve of battle, Angus engaged in feverish prayer. On the morning of the battle, white clouds were observed to form into an X shape on a bright blue sky. Despite their inferior numbers, the Picts and Scots won the battle and successfully repelled the invaders. Interpreting the pattern in the clouds as the Crux Decusata, the sign of St Andrew, Angus appointed him to be the patron saint of Scotland. Now that I have covered both elements that make up the flag of Great Britain, I will move on to the only formable nation of this episode. In-game, the Kingdom of Great Britain, much like real life, is formed from a fusion of England and Scotland. In turn, its flag is a fusion of the two flags representing those countries, the Cross of St George for England and St Andrew's Saltire for Scotland. This flag represents an evolutionary stage between the individual national flags and the flag of the United Kingdom. As in real life, this flag was used before the Kingdom of Ireland was formally merged into the United Kingdom, so no Irish elements are incorporated into the flag. This is represented in-game, as no Irish provinces are required to form the nation of Great Britain. Upon the creation of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland in 1801, St Patrick's Saltire was added to represent Ireland, and that design of the flag is still used today. This early flag of Great Britain was first adopted for national use in 1707, after the Acts of Union officially merged the two kingdoms. However, the flag had actually been used from 1606, 101 years prior to this date, as a naval ensign. This episode's penultimate nation is the somewhat obscure Lordship of the Isles, the controller of a virtual thalassocracy of hybrid Viking and Gaelic origin. While at various times in the past the nominal vassals of the Kings of Norway or Ireland, and in-game depicted as the vassal of Scotland, in real life they were functionally independent for many years, and, at their height, were even some of the most powerful landowners in the entirety of the British Isles. In common with so many of the Irish tags seen in the previous episode, the flag chosen to represent the Isles in EU4 is taken directly from the coat of arms of the chief of the ruling family. In this case, the chief of Clan Donald, who historically ruled over the maritime domains of the Isles from Finlagan Castle on Islay. I will have to admit I have been dreading this one, as the flag has 5 separate elements and little repetition. Additionally, under Scots law, coats of arms are only granted to individuals, not families, and are more susceptible to change. As a result, the meanings for each different element vary between different stories, and so arriving at a single conclusive explanation is next to impossible. I appreciate that this is an unsatisfying explanation, but unfortunately, such is likely when the details are lost to the mists of time. However, some of these symbols are more recognisable than others. The red hand holding a red cross in the second quarter is strikingly similar to the coat of arms of the Irish O'Donnell family seen in the previous episode. More to the point, Clan Donald are said to have originated from the northern parts of Ireland, and Donald and the Irish name Donal, from which O'Donnell derives, are clearly cognate. The salmon in the fourth quarter is sometimes said to represent the family's later trade interests in Glasgow, but this is disputed. The black galley in the third quarter and in the central badge is almost certainly a berlin, a kind of sail and oar-propelled vessel used extensively throughout the Isles to control their holdings. In my opinion, this is likely taken directly from the arms of the House of Cravan, the mixed Norse and Gaelic rulers of the Isles during the 11th century. Heraldic depictions of galleys can be distinguished by the flag they fly and the angle their masts are set at. In this case, both of these features are an identical match to those on the arms of the Cravan dynasty. The final flag of this episode is the fairly infamous one of the Isle of Man, sometimes just referred to as Man with two N's. In EU4, Man can be released by England, and its in-game flag is directly based on the Manx flag, which depicts a Triskelion composed of 3 armoured legs in the centre of a red field. The Triskelion, a triple spiral displaying threefold rotational symmetry, is a very ancient symbol indeed, and the version peculiar to the Isle of Man is literally known as the 3 legs in Manx. The association between this particular Triskelion and Man is not known for certain, but it dates back to at least the 13th century, where it appeared on the royal coat of arms of 3 kings of the Isle of Man. The motto of the Isle of Man seemingly derives from its flag, with its English translation being, "Wherever you throw it, it shall stand." Dare I say, a rather apt motto for the land of the 3-legged wheel. So, there we have it. The 8 remaining flags of the British Isles in Europa Universalis IV have been analysed and their origins found. Personally, I feel that these are largely more satisfactory explanations than those I found for some of the Irish flags. In general, I found the research a lot easier to do in this episode than in the previous. I don't know whether this is because the flags are a lot closer to home, or just because they were better recorded, but either way, I am grateful. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully you may even have learned something too. If you did indeed enjoy it, then please leave a like, as it really helps out the channel. Additionally, if you would like to see more of this series, then also consider subscribing. My current aim is to produce a new episode in this series every Saturday. For the next episode, I would like to try something very different for quite a drastic change of pace. I want to tackle the flags of the colonial nations. I would also love to hear what you may have to say, so please be my guest and comment on the video below. Thank you very much for watching the video, I really appreciate you taking the time to do so. I hope to see you in the next episode, or possibly even beforehand in some of my other content, but until then, ciao.